It's in a neighborhood of professionals, of people,
right.
Doctors, lawyers,
Absolutely.
you know, accomplished individuals
right.
who were just looking the other way, I suppose.
Well, Ramzi Ben El-Shi was captured in a very similar neighborhood as well. But this was built on purpose, by design. So now Pakistan's a very bureaucratic society. Somebody had to get zoning permits, planning permits, and the equivalents, right? So all this paperwork is on file literally with government agencies.
So,
and they know exactly when non-Pakistani residents are building something of any significance.
But on the other side, the United States continues to say that without Pakistan, Pakistan has actually been involved with arresting known terrorists or helping in terms of rounding some of these guys up. So this dance that they do is very confusing, I think, to people on the outside.
I think you explain the dance very well, and the American public doesn't fully understand the dynamics that go on there. I mean, but to go in there and not ask for permission, why would we do that? Why would we go in there and risk that the Pakistan army themselves could have turned around and shot?
Not at this point.
The house was a quarter mile from a police station. I mean, really?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, they never noticed at all. I mean, it's just.
So what are the
it's also
implications
half a mile from their equivalent of West Point.
Where do we go then from here in terms of our relationship? What do you think the ramifications are going to be as we go forward?
I think it's time to ask very hard questions about our relationship with Pakistan. I mean, really, we give them $3.4 billion
well, we have two relationships
aid.
Like we do with everybody. We have the relationship that everybody sees in front of the curtain, and then what's really going on, what the conversations are really behind the curtain. I think those are the ones that have to get tougher.
Let's look at Pakistan's other two allies besides the United States. All right, one is Iran, which is building an atomic weapon. Iran no longer has an embassy in the United States. So if you want to do any business with Iran, you go to the Pakistani embassy in Washington, D.C., and they point you to the Iranian interest section. That's how cozy they are with their neighbor, Iran. The other great ally of Pakistan, communist China. All right, not exactly a paragon of human rights virtues. All right, so this is where they are oriented. We're just the sucker who gives them money. Are we really an ally?
Well, do we have to pay close attention for the very reason that they have nuclear capabilities, the fact that they have the bomb, that they can do that? Is that the sole reason we need to be paying as much attention to them as we do right now?
That is the question, isn't it, right? I mean, without an atomic device, you know, our policy towards Pakistan might well be different.
It may be very different because at this point, I mean, I don't think...
But they have one. So
but at this point, I mean, India is not going to take over Pakistan. They're not going to invade. I mean, that argument that we need to have, you know, all this defense equipment to prevent an attack from India, I think falls by the wayside. It just makes no sense anymore at this point.
But it does. But it also frames up why we are in front of the curtain having friendlier conversations with Pakistan, because we have to.
We have to, but
well, for a long time, India was allied with the Soviet Union. In the Cold War mentality, we went to Pakistan as a counterbalance to India.
But in the 21st century now.
Yeah, clearly, those days are over.
They're over.
And, you know, Pakistan's alliance is with China, frankly, and with Iran. And maybe we need to reassess who our real friend in the region is. And that might well be India.
There is some thought that the reason that our guys blew up the helicopter wasn't so much because they were concerned about Pakistani or terrorists getting that type of information about how we put together our sophisticated equipment. It was more because they didn't want the Chinese to get their hands on it. So I thought that was very interesting that, you know, that people would be scavenging for parts and looking at how we design our sophisticated systems. But they didn't want the Chinese to get it.
I mean, kudos to
that is a major problem.
Yeah.
I mean, after we deployed the Stingers in the 1980s in Afghanistan, the CIA decided to track them. And they ended up finding a lot of them showed up in the markets of Western China.
Isn't it? And we also don't know how the money is spent once we give it to them, right? I mean, there's no tracking in terms of where it goes, how they're using it, and, you know.
Well, some of that money is actually so they can buy from American arms makers particular technologies, like deep sea mines, sensors for submarines, things like that.
But there's another big chunk of it that we have.
Just cash.
Exactly. It's just cash, isn't it? I mean, that's what is also very troublesome.
Cash is always troublesome. You can't follow the money when it's cash.
Well, okay, so now Congress is demanding inquiries. You know, the politicians are getting all on board on this. How much does that muddy the waters here in terms of the diplomacy that needs to happen behind the scenes quietly?
Well, I think this is a moment for Pakistan to really step up. And as they want to get right with the United States, now they need to turn over some other al-Qaeda figures and cut off the funding. They say they've shut down the funding to various al-Qaeda front groups in Pakistan, but they never really did it. Now they need to do it for real. They should give us Zawahiri. They should give us the other major al-Qaeda lieutenants that we're asking for. They know where every one of them is. And it's no accident that whenever a major al-Qaeda figure was captured, it was always on the eve of a presidential or vice presidential visit from the United States to Pakistan.
That's an interesting point as well. You think Zardari knew that bin Laden was in his country?
Either that, or the ISI has decided that it's more powerful than the premier of the country and decided not to tell him.
Which is equally as possible, isn't it?
Equally possible. But I mean, look, there's a story in The Nation, which is the largest newspaper, English language newspaper in Pakistan, several years ago, in which top generals in Pakistan testified that they hope bin Laden is never caught or captured in their country. They fear the political ramifications. And I think they were being honest. For the Pakistan elite, it's a real problem to have the bin Laden disposed of. They're not happy.
In terms of the way that we were able to secure information and about, enhanced techniques to secure information from prisoners at Guantanamo Bay, do you think, I mean, the administration is sort of, dancing around this issue. The National Security Advisor is saying that all kinds of methods were used and all kinds of information brought us to this point. But do you believe that that information at this point was developed, we were able to get it based on these enhanced interrogation techniques?
Well, a lot of people are confused. They assume that, just because in March 2003 KSM was waterboarded, all the information comes from that period of time. In fact, these guys are continuously running fountains of information, and they're periodically asked about particular people. The question about Omar Petit, because that's the name of the courier that led us to bin Laden,
Petit, right.
Was asked apparently about 3.5 months ago, not in a waterboarding situation, in Guantanamo. It was asked of both KSM and his former deputy, Abu Faraj al-Libi. So this shows, it makes a number of points. One is the Bush people are kind of right. Guantanamo is an important weapon in the war on terrorism, that it's good to have these guys in custody. But on the other hand, Obama and the liberal critics have got a point that these key facts about where bin Laden was and who the courier was and why he was important were all elicited without so-called torture.
Yeah, but people, they always fail to recognize this when we get information like this, is the longer that they're held, the more vulnerable they become.